Hello, I'm Alan, welcome to the Guitar Shack. So today's video is a short one. It's going to be just documenting the cleanup and setup of this very lovely 2009 Ibanez Artcore AG96. So this is a customer's guitar. It's been lying for a while, hasn't been used, needs a good setup and a cleanup, and he's going to be donating it to his son who wants to learn guitar, and it's a pretty impressive way to get started, I would say. So obviously it's got a bit of dust from storage. It's missing a couple of strings, and the strings that are on it are a bit blackened with age. But it's a very pretty guitar, nicely appointed. It's got a nice flame to the top, gold hardware. It's got a really interesting matching pickguard made out of the same flame topped, I guess maple probably. Not much fretwear by the looks of it. I'll get the strings off it and get up close, but really, really cool inlays on this. Nice chunky frets and nice bit of binding all around the headstock as well. So this is going to come up beautifully. So we've got very little fretwear on here. Looks as if it's been lightly levelled at one point in the past, or it might have been just from factory setup. So very little wear on there at all. And the bridge, it's got a floating bridge, and normally I would preserve the setup of that by sort of marking it with a bit of tape, but as we can see, the intonation is pretty far out by the looks of it, so I'm just going to do it from scratch and set it up from first principles. So the next step is just nothing more complicated than damp cloth. That just gets the first layer of caked on dust. Comes up nicely. And then same with the pickups. They'll get a coat of or they'll be degreased with some products just to lift that, but we should be able to get them shining up nicely. But that's the dust and gone. I'm just going to go around the sides and the back. So that's the initial clean. So tend to get serious with some of the, particularly with the hardware, and particularly on gold finished hardware, you've got to be very careful not to use anything too invasive. And the best thing to use, I find, as a degreaser is naphtha, or what is otherwise known as lighter fluid, because it will gently lift in layers the tarnishing off. Now it dries really quickly, so each time you rub it and you let it go clear, you think that's now clean, but then when it dries, it's not quite, but you can see it's getting quite a lot, uh, cleaner quite quickly. So this will be reasonably tedious, but I'll just work my way through this. So I won't make you sit through the whole thing. So here's a little before and after. So that's the cleaning done. So the next thing I'm going to do is check the frets for level and do any adjustments that they need. And then I'm going to give the fingerboard a good clean. And then we'll start the reassembly process. So checked all the frets and it's in good shape. We've got a slight rock on the 4th fret and then another one on the 9th fret. So 2 high frets out of 21 ain't bad. So I'm going to tap them down and just make sure they haven't raised. And hopefully that will fix them. And if it doesn't, then I will spot level them. Okay, so that's the 9th fret done. So what I've done is I spot leveled it with the Stumac fret kisser, which is a really useful tool because it's the same as a fret rocker, in that it's completely level along the edges, but in the middle it's got a diamond file. So what happens is when you've got a fret rocker on it and you run it or you put it on it, if there's a high spot it'll rock. You put this on it and you rub it backwards and forwards, and then that knocks it down to the same level. And then the second thing I did was I used the Music Nomad S file, which is a very handy and quick way of crowning. So that's been leveled and crowned, and then it just needs to be polished. So I'm going to do the 4th fret now, and then we'll get on to polishing all of them. So here I'm using the Fretzler fret polishing system, which is a shaped block, and then on that you use a series of grits up from 1500, 2400, 4000 and then 8000 to sequentially work through and remove all the marks so you get a nice shiny end result. So a quick pass down the fretboard, you can see the ones that have been level, crowned and polished. So they're now all ready for all of them to be polished. So at this stage I'm using the 4000 grit to bring all of them up to a nice clean shine. So that's the frets done. They'll get one more quick polish before I put the strings on. But I've now also gone over the fretboard and cleaned that with naphtha, given it a thorough cleaning and scrubbing. And now I'm going to condition it, and I'm going to use Monte Presso, which is fabulous stuff for unfinished boards. It darkens them and moisturizes them at the same time. So basically what you're doing with this is you are applying it thoroughly and rubbing it into the board, and then you leave it to sit. And depending on how long you leave it to sit for, the greater the darkening effect is. So it's very useful for things like Pau Ferro in particular, but pretty much any of the dark rosewood style boards will benefit from it. So the next thing is to use some switch cleaner on the electrics to make sure there's no crackles. And then use some axe wax to give a final coat to the whole body. And that gives it a nice deep shine. So that's the cleanup phase complete, and I've just got to do the bridge and the pickguard, and then on with the restring and the setup. So I've laid on the bridge. Now this is a floating bridge, which are always a little bit tricky because you've got to actually position it before you intonate it. So the trick to these is you work from the high E and set it to the scale length. So this has been set so that this high E saddle here is 24.75 inches from the nut, and then I'm going to string it up, and then I'm going to intonate it from there. So I checked the specs, and these came from the factory with a set of 10s, so 10 to 46s, so that's what's going on. Okay, so this is all back together again, apart from the pick guard and the truss rod cover. So walk through what I do with the setup. So basically, on one of these, I'm going to leave it a little bit higher than I would something like a Telecaster. So I'm looking for an action of about 2 mil on the bass E and 1.5 on the high E. So the starting point is the neck relief. Looking for about 10 thou. This is about 6. I'll work with that. That's sort of quite straight. I wouldn't go more relief than that, but that's how it came, and I haven't adjusted it, so that's okay. If I then look at the two things, one is the height at the 12th. So I've roughed it in at, that's about 1.75 at the moment, which is okay, and 1.75. So I'm going to drop it, I'm going to raise it very slightly at the bass side, and I'm going to drop it very slightly at the treble side, which on one of these is nice and easy because it's got adjusters, and it's just it's a tunematic bridge, but it sits on a movable plinth. It's just under 2, and it's just over 1.5, so that's a good starting point. Next thing I'm going to do is check the nut heights. I'll just do a quick check visually, and I'm looking for a tiny little bit of movement over the string over the first fret if you fret it on the 3rd fret. And there is, this nut height has already been set because that's all good. Okay, so I'll just check those with the gauge. I'm looking for, on a guitar like this, I'd say I'm looking for about 20 thou down to about 16 thou in an ideal world. Don't want to get too low. So that one is 23, 22, 22. That one needs to come down here. The G string is sitting at about 30 thou, so I will file that. And yeah, so the treble strings are sitting a little bit too high in the nut. So what I'll do is I'll lower them down. And the reason I'll do that is that you'll find that if that is in tune open, it's a bit sharp when you play it at the first fret. So basically you're trying to get down to a point, and you're chasing difference here. You're trying to get to a point where the guitar plays in tune in every fret. There's always a bit of a compromise right up at the nut end, because if you go too low in the nut, you'll get buzz on the open string. So ideal settings for a guitar like this, I would say, are 20 through to about 16. Some people would go a little bit lower. This is sitting at 23 for these 22, so they just need a very slight lowering, but these are up about 30. So drop them down and then it'll play more cleanly and it'll be in tune better. So I'll do that. Then I will set the pickup heights. So set the pickup heights by looking for or fretting it at the last fret and then measuring the difference in height between the bottom of the string and the top of the pole piece. Guitar like this, again, I'd be looking for about 5/64 on the bass string and 4/64 on the treble strings. But there's a little bit of doing that by ear, because what you're actually trying to get to is a point where they sound nice and full, but they're not too close to the strings and starting to have weird wolf tones, which is what happens when the string itself is too close to the pickup and it becomes affected by the magnetic pull. So you're trying to get that balance where they're nice, you get the full output of the pickup, but you don't go too close. And equally, on the bridge, it sits a little bit closer because there's less room to maneuver. But again, you still want to make sure that you're not actually impacting. So I've lowered this quite a bit from where it was, because the guitar as it came in was considerably higher in action. So I'm going to make all those adjustments now, and then I'll set the intonation. Now that's the last thing you do because it's affected by all those things. So that's basically what the setup is. I'm not going to walk through all of that. That's the description, and then we'll show you the end result. So here's the end result all back together. So really nice guitar. Full setup, deep clean, ready for the next owner. Okay, hope you enjoyed that. Thanks for watching. See you back in the shack soon.